Last week, Baseball United announced its first ever franchise, the Mumbai Cobras. They'll be the first professional baseball team based in India, or anywhere in the region. Naturally, I thought Mumbai Indians would be appropriate, reviving a classic major league name in a place where it wouldn't be controversial at all. Turns out they already have a cricket team that goes by that name, though. So, Mumbai Cobras it is, and that's an even better name. With only one team announced and no players named yet, there's a lot we don't know. But we do know a lot about what they plan to do, and before long we'll know the other three teams. Here's the announcement schedule. The second team will be announced on May 30th, just a few days from now. Next one after that will be June 14th, and the last one will be revealed on June 30th. Those four teams will take place in the league's inaugural showcase to be held in Dubai in November of this year, just after the conclusion of the championship series and all the summer leagues, including Major League Baseball. The first season of Baseball United will take place 1 year later in the fall of 2024, and that will include 4 more franchises that will be announced earlier in the year. So the plan is to have 8 teams from countries throughout South Asia and the Middle East competing across borders. They haven't said anything about the length of schedule, but it seems like it would just be a fall league, finishing up before the new year. Nothing like the 100-plus game schedule we see in the major summer leagues of the world. As for the players, according to their official website, there will be a player pool consisting of 200 players from more than 30 countries. Of those, 64 players will be selected for the teams. The remaining players will be drafted in anticipation of the organization's inaugural season starting in the fall of 2024. And about the level of talent, at first I thought this was going to be an amateur league consisting of local players with a few foreign additions on each team to give the talent a boost, much like we see in Europe. But it says here, players in the pool will either have experience at the Major League Baseball level, Minor League Baseball level, or at one of the other top professional baseball leagues in the world, including NPB, KBO, Lidom, LMB, and other independent leagues worldwide. It doesn't say active players, but players with experience in those leagues, though it is during the off-season for most of those leagues, so there's a good chance we'll see some active MLB or NPB players, even if they're not the most recognizable names. In the goals stated by Baseball United, they put a lot of stress on diversity. They want to have a wide variety of players from all over the world playing on each team. I think that's a good approach. You don't want to just send over a team of Americans. You want to show how global the game is and hope they'll want to join in on it. But if you have rosters full of players from the Americas and East Asia, it doesn't seem to leave any room for local players. I can't speak for the local fan bases there, but I know in most parts of the world that doesn't work. Fans usually want at least some locals on the field they can more closely relate to. One other concern, you're taking professional or ex-professional players from all the major baseball playing countries of the world and sticking them in a newly created league in a region where the sport is hardly known. It reminds me a lot of another league that started in the Middle East and failed quickly. The Israel Baseball League was born and died in 2007 after an 8-week, 45-game season. They had a few thousand show up for the opening game, but interest quickly died out after that. They did have local players, as well as Jewish players and coaches from abroad, that fans could feel some sort of connection to. But it wasn't enough. It was simply a too much, too soon approach. So, isn't that the same thing Baseball United is doing here? Well, there are some big differences here. One is the size of the market. Israel is one country with a population under 10 million. But the Middle East and South Asia together represent a market with over 2 billion people. The mission of Baseball United, as stated here, is to inspire 2 billion new fans to fall in love with baseball. That's hoping for a little too much. Of course, they're not going to get even 1 billion to take interest. But the point is there is a market of 2 billion to draw from. Any sports league, if marketed correctly, can succeed in a market like that. Think of it like professional rugby in the US. It's not a popular sport, not even in the top 10. But in a country of 330 million, you can find a few thousand fans in several major cities to attend the games. Same thing in the Middle East and South Asian regions, except that you have 6 times as many people. Baseball has an advantage over most other sports in that it's one of the world's major sports and shares a lot of similarities with the sport South Asia is most passionate about, cricket. In fact, they've said it's modeled after the Indian Premier League of professional cricket, to make it seem like something more familiar to local fans. Without providing details, they also said they are introducing rule changes and game changes that drive fan engagement. And they say they'll create a carnival-type atmosphere to drive fan excitement before, during, and after the games. Hopefully the entertainment is something unique and suits the local sports culture. You look at the regions of the world where baseball is most successful, the United States, Latin America, East Asia. Those 3 parts of the world have very different ways of celebrating the game. If they've done their homework on this, like they say they have, they'll find just the right game atmosphere for baseball in the Middle East and South Asia. I've always thought India could have its own baseball league, Pakistan too. Never really seriously thought about the Middle East, but the cross-country aspect could be another key to success. I did a video last year where I talked about what a European-wide baseball league could look like, and I mentioned that after expanding across the continent, they could add Tel Aviv as an expansion city. Not in Europe, but it would be an interesting addition, and the reason that might work, even though a baseball league in Israel didn't work, is that they would be part of something bigger than just a national league, and it might be more appealing when you're competing with other cities of the world. Same thing here. All these countries have their own soccer leagues, cricket leagues, basketball leagues, whatever. They've seen enough of city versus city within their own country. Getting to face teams from cities throughout the region can really set this league apart. Another thing that gives Baseball United a much stronger start than the Israeli league had is the ownership. The guy who started the Israeli Baseball League was some businessman from Boston. I don't know anything about him. I'm sure he was quite wealthy and knew a thing or two about baseball. But Baseball United is owned by some of the biggest names in baseball over the last few decades. Major League Hall of Famers Barry Larkin and Mariano Rivera are founding owners. They were later joined by Adrian Beltre, Felix Hernandez, Elvis Andrus, Miguel Tejada, among others. That's a lot of guys with millions of dollars and connections throughout the baseball world. You couldn't ask for a better group. When starting a league like this, you might take a loss in the first year or two before you start to turn a profit and make the league a big success. They should have enough to weather the storm until it really takes off. Another problem new startup leagues have is they're run by people who don't truly understand the game. That won't be the case here. They are not going to build new venues for either the showcase or the inaugural season. They would either have to build something ridiculously expensive to attract fans, or build something affordable yet bland and wouldn't be very appealing. Instead, they'll be using cricket stadiums, again something local sports fans will be comfortable with. Dubai International Cricket Stadium will be the venue for the inaugural showcase this November. Venues for the 2024 season will be named later. If the league has growing success year after year for several years, then it's time to build baseball-specific venues. And that's the real measure of success. When you've reached the point where you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a brand new ballpark and expect to get a return on that investment, you know you've really made it. The big question right now, the one we'll have an answer to very soon, is where will the other three initial teams be located? It made sense to put the first one in India, since that's where over half the region's population is. I'm sure one of the other teams will be in Pakistan. It's also got a massive population of around 250 million. And as a country, Pakistan is way ahead of India when it comes to baseball. It's got the strongest national baseball team in the region. They deserve to have one of the initial four. Both India and Pakistan could get second franchises for the 2024 season when the league expands to 8 teams. But for the inaugural showcase, I think they'll want to have 2 teams in South Asia and 2 in the Middle East. One would have to be in Dubai. That is where Baseball United is operating. And if there's any place where you can throw a bunch of international players together and make it work, Dubai is that place. It's got people from all over, and a lot of immigrants from South Asia. Good city for sports events, too. They host a successful annual F1 race. Recently hosted the first NBA game in the Middle East, too. As for the 4th city, I honestly don't know. Bahrain is another good place for sports events, but I'm not sure they'd go there. Turkey or Egypt would be interesting, of course, but it's hard to imagine one of the franchises being there. Maybe I'm wrong about having 2 teams in the Middle East. Maybe they'll have one in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, I don't know. But we will all know by the end of next month. We'll also know the TV rights and sponsorship deals very soon. Then we'll learn about the rule changes, season format, and all the other details. It's going to be a lot of fun as the news comes rolling in over the next few months. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.